Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon to learn and collaborate with Dr. Emily Freeland. Dr. Reeves, would you like to welcome everyone and introduce Emily?
I certainly would. I just want to tell everybody, thank you so much for sharing time with us today. I know that this has been a particularly crazy busy time in education, and the fact that you're willing to still commit time to learning speaks so much of your professionalism and commitment. And I just didn't want the opportunity to pass without saying personally, thank you. Moreover, we're really happy that you're still in our profession because, as you know, we're losing people, and we've got to make sure that we stick together as a profession and just really provide you the respect and support that you need. It is my great pleasure to introduce my colleague and friend, Dr. Emily Freeland. Dr. Freeland has more than 28 years of experience as everything from a teacher to administrative positions at the state, district, and school level. As a science teacher, Emily knows a thing or two about evaluating the evidence before us, and she has brought that evidence-based approach to her work also as a professional learning associate with Creative Leadership Solutions. She's worked throughout the United States to share her ideas, particularly about helping underperforming schools, schools in turnaround, and students in distress. And her work on From Ghosts to Graduates, I think, is precisely what our country needs right now. Excuse me. Many of you know the distressing data on the number of students that left during the pandemic and have not come out. There are ghosts, and we need Dr. Freeland's wisdom to help turn them from ghosts to graduates. So Emily, we are so delighted to have you and looking forward to hearing what you have to say this afternoon. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. And just like Doug, I want to take a minute to thank you all. Thank you not only for joining us today, but for showing up for kids every day for the past 3 years in what notably was the most unique, unusual, and challenging years in education I think that we've probably ever had. And more than that, thank you for continuing to show up, and thank you for joining us again to hopefully gain a nugget or two that you can take with you back to your classrooms and to your schools to support your students. So I see that a whole lot of screens are off, and that's totally okay. But just to let you know a few logistical things, occasionally I will ask you to either raise a physical hand, which would require a camera to be on, or you can raise your Zoom hand if you know where those are to get some responses. This will be interactive. It is intended to be more conversational than straight presentation, and we will even have some breakout room opportunities for you to chat with your colleagues. So out of curiosity, raise your hand if you are in a role that allows you to do classroom visits. Lots and lots of hands. Raise your hand if you wish you had opportunities to visit classrooms. So those of you who do, and those of you who wish, what is something that you see as a benefit to visiting classrooms? We'll hear from two people, and you can take yourselves off mute and just tell us, what are some of those benefits to getting to visit classrooms? I see Judith. There we go. Yes, Mia and Stacy will go next.
Well, one of the things that I would really like to see is how other people, especially in English, which is what I teach, I would love to see how they handle the topic. I've never really gotten to see, in fact, I've never gotten to see one of my coworkers in English teach.
So thank you for that. And then I saw Stacy next.
Yes, I think a great benefit is what she just said, seeing how another teacher approaches the topic, which gives you great ideas as a teacher, how other teacher, resources they use, anything like that. Also just even classroom setup as far as how they manage the room, how they deal with the students, gives other teachers great ideas.
So thank you both for sharing those. I too get to visit classrooms, and there are things, you can go in and you can watch from the teacher perspective. You can also watch from the student perspective. And there's so many things that we can see and so many ideas that we can get and so many things that we can just observe taking place. And so in those opportunities, there was one particular day that was very much like these fall days that we're having, that I walked into an 8th grade science classroom and my perspective completely changed. So it's 8th grade. I walked in and the room was on the edge of chaos, if you can imagine that. The teacher was in a race to ask as many questions as she could. They were doing a review game, so kids were wiggling, hands were waving. And for some reason, this one dark-haired girl who was sitting in the middle of the room caught my attention. She was dressed really plainly. She had on a long floral skirt and a faded blue t-shirt. Her hair was long and wavy and a little bit unkempt. She had these big glasses on, and I remember them because they were black and they were heavy and a little bit too heavy for her face. And initially she was so excited. You know, you've seen kids doing this where they're just raising their hand and waving and trying to get the teacher's attention, and she kept doing it and she kept doing it. And every time the teacher passed her over, her hand got a little bit lower and a little bit lower and a little bit lower, until eventually she was just sitting there and she had her hands in her lap. Her smile had disappeared. She started to look down, and I could only interpret that shift from enthusiasm to what looked kind of like a defeated kind of disappointment. And she slumped in her chair, and then it was almost like she wanted to disappear, that she no longer wanted to be seen, almost like she became a ghost. And I started chronicling in my head times that I had seen kids who were all excited and then that excitement went away, or those times that it seemed like they just didn't want to be seen. And the more I thought about that, the more I came to the realization that we have a ghost problem in our schools. Lost spirits are wandering our hallways. They're hiding in our restrooms, but mostly they exist in our classrooms. Some of them aren't as easily seen, even though they may be desperately trying to get our attention. Maybe they're the ones waving their hands, waiting to be recognized, staying around after class to chat, sending us these ghosting signals that maybe we don't get just yet. Our ability to sometimes see those ghosts isn't so easy because we have so many kids who might be seeking our attention. We're trying to get to the next class. We have a lot to do. So the haste of the school day changes things. Then there are spirits that we can't help but see. They're the ones that enter our classrooms and desks move and papers fly up into the room and other kids get shoved out of the way, almost like those poltergeists. Those kids seek our attention both in positive and negative ways. And then there are others that are even harder to connect with. Usually you find them toward the back of the room. A friend of mine refers to them as suffering from the 4 downs. He says they have their heads down, they have their hands down, they might be wearing hand-me-downs, and their outlook on life is downtrodden. They come into our schools day after day, week after week, year after year, hoping. They're hanging on to see if maybe today's different. Maybe today somebody will see them. Maybe today someone will care enough to reach them. So in your mind, look down your hallways, gaze to the back of your classrooms. Do you see them? Do you see their faces? Do you know their names? Have you heard their stories? Take just a minute. Think, if you will. Who are your ghosts? I'm gonna put my screen. Who are your ghosts? Write down the name of the student who you suspect is a ghost. And what behaviors are they exhibiting that make you think this?
Emily, if you want to show your full screen,
Oh, is it not showing full screen?
I'm seeing full screens, next slide and notes.
Oops. Here.
There you go.
Yay.
There you
All right.
Would you like them to put their names in chat or just write it down on paper, or either?
Just write it down on paper.
Okay.
We'll use the rule of 2 again. So let's hear from 2 different people. What are the behaviors that they're exhibiting? What have you seen? And Lisa, I'll get you to help me here.
We're not gonna say the name. I'll put my face on. Should I tell her?
Brandon, you can go ahead and unmute if you'd like to share out or use the hand function. Emily, we have folks sharing in the chat.
Chat, okay.
Will we have access to the slide deck? Yes, we'll send it up as a follow-up. They're hiding behind their phones, absent frequently. Doodling.
The one student I'm thinking about, he goes to sleep in class, constantly getting removed because she's conflicting with the teacher. I know she's low. She's not on the phone. What you think? What are some other traits?
Just head down.
Yeah, just head down, sleeping, withdraw from class.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you, Vera.
You're welcome.
Avoidance, wandering the halls, disengaged, seem surprised when they talk to you, little eye contact, low grades, by themselves, working on other schoolwork.
Thank you for that. There are lots and lots of behaviors that our ghosts exhibit. And we will talk about some of those. We'll also talk about some strategies to help mitigate the ghosting process. But why does this whole thing matter? It matters because ghosting is the path to dropping out, and it doesn't just start in high school. A lot of times when we talk about this whole idea of dropping out of school, we think of it as a high school problem, but it's not. Because dropping out is a journey. It's not just an event. So think about this. Our public schools in the year 2021 lost more than 1.3 million students. These are students that didn't show up on a roster after having been on a school roster the previous year. And it seemed to impact the lower grade levels more than it did the upper grade levels. Many of these students who didn't show up struggled to connect. They existed as that black square that we all remember so much from our Zoom or Teams or Google Meets, whichever format you used. And we were left even questioning you if they were even there. I had one teacher share with me that she would drop kids off the call just to see if they would come back. That was her test to see if they were even there. And because of remote learning and because of all of the trauma that many of our students suffered during then, our students came back to us as different people. And then when you throw in the mandated quarantining protocols, we've created ghosts in places where they didn't previously exist. Some of the symptoms that we've seen that chronic absenteeism, which came up, the failing grades and disruptive behaviors. They are three of the biggest indicators of ghosts. Students who dropped out, think about this, missed an average of 16 days as first graders. Imagine, we already see these trends starting in the first grade. 10 days is usually the gauge. Now think about quarantining protocols. For each additional absence that kids have, it increases by 10%. So now failing grades. Think about our kids who weren't connected and missed out on learning opportunities. We saw D and F rates rise during the pandemic, and we've continued to see them rise since kids have been back in school. Why? Because of missing work, because they fail tests, and because they don't come to school. So that's nothing new. And then disruptive behaviors have only become worse since kids have come back, because they missed out on the structure of school, they missed out on the support, they missed out on those social opportunities. So the last 3 years have left so many students disengaged, disconnected, and disenchanted with the whole schooling process. So now revisiting that list that you made, thinking through the lens of chronic absenteeism, failing grades, and disruptive behavior, can you add 2 additional students to your list? And when I say go, Lisa will open up our breakout rooms. You will have 7 minutes to talk to your colleagues. The person whose first name starts with a letter closest to the letter A will start the conversation. Talk about the ghosts in your classroom. Who are they? What behaviors are they exhibiting? Go.
I'm going to stay with you, Emily. I'm on lunch supervision.
Emily, I made 20 rooms, so there are about 4 people in each room. Give or take.
Hi, Emily. I had left you a message that I got to hop off to go do lead evaluator training. So I'm going to do
Glad
that.
to have you for the little bit that we did, and we'll follow up.
Thank you. Yes, I'll look forward to looking at the rest of the slides, and I'm glad I was able to get on for as long as I could. So thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
I'll do that. Is everybody in there?
Every room has at least 2 people that are engaging. Two more minutes. Okay, breakout rooms are being closed, so people should start coming back within 60 seconds.
This meeting is being recorded.
Emily, some folks said that they were in breakouts, but nobody joined them, and some had to step out. So folks are welcome to put their information in chat. The breakouts, colleagues were talking about the ghosts in their schools.
So it looks like we have everyone back.
Yes.
Sticking with the rule of 2. Let's hear from 2 people, something that you heard in your breakout room. Something that you heard in your breakout room. You can drop in the chat too if you don't want to take yourself off mute.
I'll share a little bit about what we talked about in our group. We had a good breakout group of 3 people, and one was from Kentucky, one person was from near Pittsburgh, and one from California. And we talked about the behaviors and talked about how we feel a little bit like we're failing the kids that are not getting what they need, although we're trying very hard to do those things. And after listening to the 2 educators in my group, it made me feel like, because I'm very sad that those are happening, I actually have fewer ghosts than in the past, which is probably very different than many people. I've been seeing the ghosts coming alive in class. I think one of the things, in our session just ended, but one of the things I changed is I greet every student at the door every day, every period. And what a difference it makes, because just saying good morning, noticing something about them, that once we get into the classroom, they seem to want to connect because I connected with them before they came in. And I teach 7th, 8th, and 9th grade ELA English in a rural area. So I would have to say that technology hasn't been a problem. I don't see phones. They don't have them out during class. So I definitely have a positive situation. But that's just one of the techniques that I've started using that's made a difference.
It's awesome. And for our other friends on the call, there is a research base to this that says engagement increases by 75% when kids are greeted at the door. So thank you for sharing that. I see some things in the chat. Do we have any others who want to share out loud? Lisa, what's in our chat? What else did we have?
Folks are talking about that adults are isolated, were isolated as well. It doesn't matter where you're coming from in the United States or what country, that everyone was hit hard by that and still is today. People really appreciated the strategy of meeting people at the door. The importance of relationships was reiterating. Needing tips to engage students not only on tasks, but communicating with others than their peers. Could you get the could you give us the citation for the stats for greeting students at the door, Emily?
I don't remember who said it, but when she mentioned it, that was just it's but there is a research base for this. I will add it in as a slide. So everyone will know that, but that is a statistic that I have seen about greeting kids at the door. So it's a big.
Okay, we'll add that to the follow-up when we send out the PowerPoint.
Yes, we will.
So Marilyn mentioned there was also another article that people wanted the source for, Emily, that you mentioned.
That one was mine. In our little breakout room, I was just discussing that it's one of the most culturally responsive articles that I've read as of late, and it's called An Indian Father's Plea. And it was an earlier work in the 90s, and it's an Indigenous father who sends his 5-year-old son to kinder, and the teacher is saying already that he's a slow learner. And so it's a beautifully written letter from this Indigenous father to the teacher about he's not slow, he's learned differently, he's been learning his whole life, and what he's bringing is valuable. And what you're asking him to do is a shift that is huge. And instead of asking him to replace what he knows to be true, what he's learned all this time and the way he's learned, maybe as the teacher, you can find value, and he's offering to help her consider his culture and bring that value to the classroom so that she can find that balance for the student and make whatever it is that she's teaching him valuable and meaningful, so that he doesn't appear to be a slow learner, or in our today's webinar's language, a ghost.
Thank you for that. We will find that and have a link for that. So thank you so much.
I posted it in the chat.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much.
And then the last comment from Marilyn, Emily, was I think students found during the pandemic that things we've been telling them, you are important here, attending school is important, your behavior is important, did not necessarily feel true anymore. So why come to school? Why behave in a way that is different than feels good to me, since it doesn't matter if I'm part of a positive experience of the collective. So.
Thank you so much for that. That is so true. And those are some of the contributors to our new ghosting population. So thank you so much for sharing that. So we had an old problem. Now we have a new twist on that old problem because of all of those things that took place during the pandemic, that disconnection that students felt, like you mentioned. This the messages, those unintended messages that we relayed about school. So thank you, Marilyn, for including those. They're in the book. But they are, I mean, we used to tell them it's so important for you to be here. But then we quit even checking on them to find out where they were and what they were doing. And bigger than that, when they did come back, we started sending them home for 10 days at a time. Now, that was not us. That was something that was mandated outside of schools, but we had to enforce those things, unfortunately. On top of that, we have to consider some of those other factors. Grade level retentions. Most schools and districts loosened their retention policies. We already knew what retention, how it impacted students. The games that they show don't last, and they end up falling further and further behind. And students who have been retained have a much higher risk of turning into ghosts and turning into dropouts. 9th grade is when they start accruing credits, and students who get behind in 9th grade tend to become or have already been ghosts. And we saw more students suffering from this during remote learning in the pandemic years. And then the middle grades are this black hole. Sometimes the middle grades are where students really learn those social skills, those how to connect with their peer skills. They learn those strategies that they need to be successful in high school. And we had so many kids who entered 9th grade having missed out on 2 of those middle grade years. So what can we do about all of this? So thinking about another stat that I will share with you, and this comes from an Ed Week article, that at least 31 states have seen a decline in graduation rates for the 2020-2021 school year. So this problem that we had tackled, that we had overcome, it's been over 15 years since we've seen a decline in graduation rates, but it's happening. Raise your Zoom hand if this is happening in your school, or if you suspect that your school may be seeing a decline in graduation rates. Mm-hmm. So several of us do. Thank you for that. It is happening, and it has the potential to get worse unless we do something now. So what can we do? We can hone our ghost whispering skills. Some of you may recall, this goes back just a little bit, but there was a television show that's now canceled, and it had Jennifer Love Hewitt as the main character. Her name was Melinda Gordon, and she was a young woman who had this ability to both see and communicate with ghosts. Those spirits would seek her out. They would try to get her help so that they could talk to their loved ones, send on messages so that they could find that peace that they needed to move on to the afterlife. Some of those communications you would see her be very upset about, very concerned about. She would have, you know, these issues with trying to bridge that gap between those who were living and those who were in limbo, if you will. And because of this gift she had, they called her the Ghost Whisperer, and that was also the title of the television show. Well, I'm here to tell you that there are teachers who have incredible ghost whispering skills, and I'm privileged to know very many others. One in particular that has had a huge impact on me is named Drew. Drew is as unassuming as someone who is 7 feet tall can be, and I'm not kidding, he really is 7 feet tall. When he walks into a door, he does have to do the duck because he is just that tall. And I was in awe every time I went into his classroom because his classroom just happened to be filled with ghosts. He had students from all demographics, all ability levels, special education, those who were academically behind, those who were behaviorally challenged. He had the whole gamut of kids in his classroom, but he was especially skilled because he not only watched for those ghosting signals, But instead of waiting for the kids to reach out to him, he reached out to them first. He recognized that they had very indirect, non-traditional ways that they would try to get his attention, but he made an effort to connect with every student every day. Go back to that greeting them, walking in the door. Drew did that. And that's why I know that statistic, because I had looked it up. He knew the ghosts' stories, and he shared some with me. Some of them were sad. Some of them were tragic. Some of them were scary. The lives of those students and what they went through on a daily basis was just very incredible to know. But what was so interesting was when those students, when those ghosts were with Drew, they were docile and they were engaged. He knew them so well, he could meet their needs from the minute that they walked into the door. And I would observe them in other classes, and they didn't behave anything like they did in his classroom. He continuously encouraged them. He found ways to redirect them when they were off course in their behaviors or in their work. And they know that he believes in them. He embraced them. A lot of teachers want those kids out of the classroom, but he embraced them. He saw them for what they had the potential to be, not for what they were in that moment. And so that to me, is awe-inspiring when you see those teachers who, even for the kids who struggle a lot, they're still reaching out to them constantly, trying to find that one thing that will pull them back and engage them. Some of the messages that skilled ghost whisperers share first are that I see you. So speaking back to the point that was brought up about relationships and building those purposeful relationships with students, I communicate that your learning is important to me. And that speaks to the engagement piece. And then last, that I believe in you. So when we have those strong relationships with students, when we make those efforts to get to know them and know who they are, when we find learning experiences that they can see themselves in, and then we have high expectations for their learning and they know that, then we're exercising those really good ghost whispering skills. So starting with the I see you. To be able to see our ghosts, we actually have to know them. Honestly, I go into classrooms months into school, and there are teachers who still don't know their students. They don't know their names. They'll do the, oh, is so-and-so here today? How can you not know they're not there? How did you not notice if their desk was empty when you took roll this morning? We should all know who is in our classroom. Another one is just not even knowing anything about them. So again, go back to raising your Zoom hand. If you have a name that some people find difficult to pronounce, raise your hand. I see lots of hands. So let's hear from, again, rule of two people. How does it make you feel when someone mispronounces your name? Don't be scared. Take yourself off mute. Tell us, how does it make you feel when someone mispronounces your name?
For me, it's my last name, and it's quite annoying because I don't think it's a difficult name. It is Devis. Even if they said Davis would be much better, but people always, almost 100% of the time, the first time they say my name, want to say and need to say Davis, and that's not the name. And so when I correct them, I've been corrected. I've had people tell me I misspelled it at my age. And so it can get really just frustrating because I don't think that they're just taking a moment to give the effort to say it the right way.
Thank you. Let's hear from one more. How does it make you feel when people mispronounce your name?
My last name is difficult. I get 100 different ways and it doesn't bother me.
It doesn't bother you.
It does not bother me because I know it's difficult.
Thank you for that. So one on either side of this. So one thing that I'll say about students is incorrectly pronouncing their names can damage the student-teacher relationship.
Yep.
Because it's a sign. So, and Stephanie hit right on this very easily, because it's a sign that we're not willing to extend the effort to truly know who that student is. And it causes barriers to learning. We know that relationships are important to learn. Think about this. A person's name is the first gift that they are given in life. It is a representation of who they are. It is a representation of their culture. It is a representation of their family. And when we don't take the time and the opportunity to know the students' names, then we're also not taking the time and the effort to know them. Shortening it to nicknames, unless they told you that that's okay, is not a good thing to do. I learned when I was in the role of assistant principal and we were in a meeting with a parent. It was a student who was newer to the country. And so we still had to do the EL meetings, even though he had been here for a year and he did speak English and he was being successful in school, but we all know that that is part of the process. He was from Ukraine and his name was difficult to pronounce. And so the students took it upon themselves to give him a nickname, and he accepted that nickname. The teachers adopted that nickname, but sitting in that room with his mother, and the counselor used that name because everybody thought it was okay. And the mother said to us, she really wished we wouldn't use it because it was a Russian version of a name, not a Ukraine version of the name. And we all know right now that there is a conflict between those two countries. And so it was culturally offensive to her that people in the school were doing this. Now, the kid was a 7th grader. He just wanted friends. He was okay with it. But that was my first lesson in names mean something. And we should be very careful what we do when we call students by name other than what they're given. What are some of those strategies that we can use so that we know their names and pronounce them properly? Another way to get to know students, I was speaking with a friend just yesterday who had been in a parent conference, and the teacher told her, I really don't know your daughter that. Think about how many months we are into school. And to have a teacher say, I don't even know who your child is. So a big barrier to students performing well and students staying connected is having a relationship with the people who are in the building. Another wonderful strategy that I have seen teachers use successfully is the 2x10 strategy, and that is the name that it's called. And you select a small number of students, whether it's 5 students or 10 students, depending on what you can manage and the opportunities that you have throughout the day. If you're in a high school, maybe it's 3 to 4 students each class period. And spending just 2 minutes in a conversation with them for 10 consecutive days. The last teacher that I talked to about using this strategy, and after she implemented it, she used it on the trip to and from lunch. So there was still the opportunity in her school and in her schedule to walk to lunch with students. Was a high school, but that was just part of how they managed their lunch schedule. And she was amazed at what she had learned, what she was able to learn during that time about her students. And she discovered that had she not taken that time, there are things that she would have never learned. So 2 minutes, 10 days, to however many students you can manage.
Emily,
Yes.
could Could you, someone asked about the name of the research by Walker. Could you go back to that?
Yes, there. What was the question?
Walker right there. What is the name of the research? Do you know the name of the article by Walker, 2021?
I don't remember the name of the article anymore, but it was specific to knowing students' names. So we'll drop that.
I'll Google it right now while you're continuing.
Okay. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
This link's ready to go. So think about that. It all starts at the very beginning of the school year. Those connections begin on day one, and we all have strategies that we use. So again, when I say go, Lisa will open up the breakout rooms. You will have 7 minutes to share strategies for what you do, not just on the first day, but during that first week, even for what you do to make connections with students. Go.
All right, I'm going to recreate the room so you have opportunities to interact with new folks, and here we go. We'll see you back here in 7 minutes.
So the back, the bibliography, so I'll have all these articles.
Right, right. I'm sending you one more.
I'm never expecting. Article by Walker is why pronouncing students' name correctly is so important. It is an NEA article. I think I saw you grab that. Because it also talks about cultural skills.
Yeah, it's NEA.org.
Mhm.
Yeah. I just shared it right before we went on breakouts.
can capture the chat, can't you? On Zoom?
Yeah, I believe it'll be recorded to my computer and I can share it with you afterward. A minute and a half and I'll close the rooms. Okay, we're going to start closing.
Is being recorded.
Great.
Thank you.
Everybody's back.
Have everybody back. Hopefully you got at least one new strategy that you can use at the beginning of the year. And I'll remind you that after the holidays, when we come back in January, we're starting over again. So some of these strategies that maybe you haven't tried yet, you can start to try then, because having been out for what is typically about 2 weeks, we need to reestablish those connections with our students. So it's another opportunity to start anew and get to know our students better. So the second one, your learning is important to me. We said that speaks specifically to engagement, but one of the things that we have to remember is that attention precedes engagement. So first we have to be able to get students' attention. If you're familiar with Polly Patrick, she's a dear friend of mine, wonderful author and presenter. She says you can capture students' attention, but you have to invite their engagement. What do you think that means? Back to our rule of 2. Let's hear from 2 people. What do you think this means?
So it means you can have their attention and they may be quiet and giving you eye contact, but they're not mentally engaged in what you're teaching.
Thank you for that. Anyone else?
It makes me think of compliance compared to engagement. Like I can have students be compliant and attentive, but it doesn't mean that they're really processing or engaging in the learning.
The word compliance.
Emily, 2 things. First, mentioned in the chat, excuse me, you can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make them drink. It also makes me think of my daughter, who her teacher would get her attention because the teacher's hair's dyed red and she talks about anime. However, my daughter's disengaged in her class. So she's not engaged in the learning, but the teacher's definitely gotten her attention on the wrong items.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are familiar with Robert Marzano's work, just as a reminder, he did the Art and Science of Teaching, the Highly Engaged Classroom, Classroom Management That Works, Classroom Instruction That Works. He also has a book called The Highly Engaged Classroom. And what I like so much about the message in that book is he talks about the difference in attention and engagement. And he says, you know, again, starting with attention, first thing we have to attend to as the teacher is, how do our students feel? We have to address, how do I feel? If students are cold or hungry or stressed, we can't even get their attention. Once we have their attention, we have to determine, are they interested? So for students, am I interested in what I have to learn? Those are the two things that capture that attention. So if they're feeling great, they're interested in what we're doing, to move to engagement, they have to see value. And that's the, is this important? So is this important to me? Do I find value in this learning? That's going to get my engagement. So I feel great. I'm really interested in what you have to say. I know that this is important, so I'm all in there. The last one is, can I do this? And typically this is where we lose a lot of students, because if they don't feel like they can be successful or they won't be supported, then that's where it stops. So they have to both have those relationships, understand that there is support available for them to stay engaged and then actually get the work done. Our fearless leader, Doug Reeves, and then some of you may be familiar with our colleague Neil Gupta, did an article called The Engagement Illusion that was published by ASCD. And he talks about, a lot of times as teachers, we make the mistake of thinking that something is of interest to us will also be of interest to our students. And we also think that students can't be influenced by us to then become engaged. So when you think about those questions from Marzano and things that we as the teacher can do, we absolutely can control the engagement that we get from our students. One of those things, again, I'll go back to my colleague, Polly Patrick, who also was an author of this book called Ask, Don't Tell, with Angela Peary. And they wrote, questions are an invitation to learn and to connect. And when you think about that, when you ask questions, people can't help but engage with you. Your mind automatically goes to a place of thinking to formulate a response, even if the response is, I don't know. And when we set up opportunities for students to both talk to each other and to us as the teacher, then we set up those opportunities for those connections. So what are some strategies within here? Some of you may be familiar with the question formulation technique. It's QFT. There's a whole website out there on just how to formulate good questions, both for us as the teacher and how we can do this with our students. Go to that whole adage, the one who does the work does the learning. I would contend that the one who does the asking does the thinking. So transferring that responsibility to students, it's done by the Right Institute, RIGHT. So if you just Google QFT or question formulation technique or the Right Institute, you will come up with a plethora of activities and resources to work on questioning as a teacher, because first we have to plan questions that are worth answering, but bigger than that, we need to get our students to be able to ask questions, because that helps them to become better learners, better comprehenders of it, and it builds that connection when we talk to each other. But when we talk about SEL in the classroom and building relationships with students and between students, we need those structured discussion protocols. So very intentionally using think, pair, shares, Socratic seminars, anything even as simple as a back-to-back, face-to-face, where we set up the structure for students to talk to each other. When we just do the whole, oh, talk to your partner, we know what that looks like. So we have to use those intentional protocols and strategies to help students to be able to do this. So whether you're using GLAD strategies or AVID strategies, you know, we all take these things and we pull them in under our umbrella and, you know, slap a name on them. But they're all just good structured strategies to get students to talk to each other. Then we have students learning and connecting through questions. So how can you purposefully plan for student engagement? Last time to breakout rooms, this is a 4-minute breakout room, so it's going to be super duper quick. What are some things that you purposefully do to plan for student engagement? We will see you back in 4 minutes.
Emily, would you check your chat, please?
I went in and nobody was in my room, so.
Bring everybody back, Lisa. I know we've had a bit of struggles and we got some people jumping off, so.
Okay, let me close the rooms and we'll come back. Okay, they'll be back within 60 minutes. Or seconds.
Meeting is recorded.
Been watching my timer over here on the right and it's wrong. I thought I still had 5.
I completely forgot about daylight saving times till I went from Santa Fe to Albuquerque. And I was like, looked at my car clock. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Thank goodness that happened on Sunday versus Monday.
Gonna have to fix that. Might be a low battery. Oh well. All right, we may have all back. We're going to get back. So last thing, the whole part of helping students to understand that we believe in them. There's a study that was done back in the 70s called the Teacher Expectations Student Achievement Study that talked very directly about teachers communicating their expectations to students inadvertently. And so I'll skip the statistics very quickly and just share that some of those things that help to communicate high expectations to students are providing all students an opportunity to speak and to share with each other. One of the things that we make the mistake of using things like the popsicle sticks or randomization, and it provides equal opportunity to speak, but it doesn't provide equity of voice in the classroom. So those structured protocols that we mentioned before provide those opportunities for all students to have a voice in the classroom. Making those individual connections with students for help, allowing wait time And Jackie Walsh in quality questioning says there are actually two wait times. There's the wait time when you ask the question, and then there's the wait time after the response that allows everyone the opportunity to process the response and then move the conversation and the thinking forward. Those high-level questioning, the questions that are worth answering, the interest, and then listening more intently. So thinking about, just a reflection for you, what are some behaviors that you can adopt, adapt, or abandon that intentionally communicate high expectations for students? Because at the end of the day, they need to know that we believe in them and we believe in their ability to be successful. And we have behaviors in our classroom that indicate otherwise. So I'll leave you with this. If we have any Stranger Things fans on the call, I love Stranger Things. How many of you are familiar with the Upside Down? So I see some raised hand. Okay, so if you're not familiar with Stranger Things, the Upside Down is a very unhospitable environment that's a little scary, that's a little dangerous, and it makes people really uncomfortable and scared when they're there. It's a little alternate parallel universe kind of thing, so I'll leave it there without giving anything else away. But some of our students feel like the classroom is the Upside Down. So as teachers, we have to take those actions that close down the pathway to the Upside Down, that make school and make our classroom a place that students want to be. Things like teaming with each other for success. Imagine if we had 7 different bosses that had 7 different sets of expectations so that they changed every hour. That can be really uncomfortable for students. So how can we, as a 9th grade team or as a language arts team, as a 3rd grade team or a 6th grade team, come together and create those common expectations so students don't have to guess what every different classroom is going to look like? I'll go to my friend Polly Patrick one more time. She says, as educators, we are dispensers of hope. In the Upside Down, people lose hope. Our kids lose hope in our school. So what are some of those things that we can do in the classroom that let them know that they are supported, that let them know that we care and that we see them, that their learning is important to us so that we can foster that hope? And then the last piece is thinking about some of the policies and procedures that we have in place that keep that gateway open, that make school more of that upside down piece. As teachers, we don't have control over those things, but we do have a voice. So hopefully you have found some strategies that can begin to help you. There are so many more. Obviously, this is a subject that is very important to me, so I could talk for hours. I've already gone over my time. This is the start of our journey together. It is not the end of our journey. So don't hesitate to reach out, to ask questions. My phone number is on the PowerPoint. My email is on the PowerPoint. I am here as an additional support for you. I will answer any inquiries that you have, and I will share everything that I have with you so that we can find and reconnect with the ghosts in our schools, and we can turn them from ghosts into graduates. So thank you for your time, for taking time out of your day to join us, and for supporting your colleagues in the share.